UNIO, bridging in-room and personal headphone monitoring. At its center, the 9320A SAM reference controller, 5 professional audio tools in one. Monitor controller, calibration set, output interface, headphone amplifier, GLM remote. The 9320A has exceptional connectivity. The adaptive SAM monitoring range enables perfect response optimization using GLM software and our grade room acoustic report. The 9401A offers audio over IP connectivity for SAM monitors, from stereo to immersive layouts. The personal reference monitoring solution provides a specific factory-calibrated 8550A headphone matched to a 9320A reference controller for maximal accuracy. Aural ID software offers binaural virtual monitoring from stereo to immersive. With your highly detailed, tailor-made personal HRTF ensuring the most truthful headphone monitoring experience. Discover more at genelec.com/UNIO.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the second webinar from our series about UNIO. Actually, Darren did a really good job and the video explained everything. So I'm done. Thanks for being with us. No kidding. Hopefully I can explain a few things in more detail this evening. Hopefully you're already with us because we had the time changeover in a lot of countries at this weekend. And for example, I would not have been here if Jaco would not have reminded me that we start 1 hour earlier. So I would have been here German time at 7, which would have been wrong. So for all of you who join a little later, of course, we will record this one and you can then watch it later. This time we are really live. Last time we had been almost live with, a few tricks, but this time we are really live again. So yeah, I'm really happy that you joined us, and let's just, start right away with UNIO part 2. This time it's about headphones and, of course, the solution that includes the headphones. Because as you already can see, I have shown this nice diagram, I think, several times already. And now you see that the headphone that is shown in this diagram actually already was our headphone. But of course, nobody was, I think, it wasn't possible for everyone to spot this. So I think it was okay for us to just already use this before we released the headphones. Let's start with a nice quote from Aki Makivirta, our R&D director. And Aki just, put it like this: the aim of the UNIO ecosystem is to enable headphones to be used as a monitoring tool with a level of accuracy that loudspeakers have traditionally provided. And I think we can be self-confident. Actually, we tried to reach the accuracy that our loudspeakers have provided. Aki somehow is already part of this presentation, not only with this quote, because a lot of the really nice drawings and also about the material I'm using here, about the HRTF process, are all done by him. And yes, it's always my pleasure to be in front of the camera, but the brain is still sitting in Finland for sure. My name is Marcel Schechter. I think most of you already know me because I'm doing this stuff quite often, and I'm also heavily active in the support. And yeah, you can always reach us under support@genelec.com. I will also show this again in the end of the session. And very important, because we are live, you can ask your questions you have about this show today at any time using the comment section on your platform. YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of your comments will just be collected, and then I'll get through them. And if I'm not able to answer something, the brain in Finland will be. So we'll then just get back to you later on. So let's start with being in a studio. And this is a wonderful room. This is our experience center in Stockholm. Actually, this is built into an old studio. And you can see this also has the layout of a proper studio. So we have flush mounted speakers, the 1234s, near fields that are here with W371 and 8351s, which is pretty decent near field setup. And of course, a console. And one Patrick sitting there and enjoying this nice studio. And Patrick actually also now is wearing the 8550s. So we have everything in this image we will talk about today. We did a photo shoot with Patrick. This was already, I think, over 1 year ago. And of course, we always had to shoot the photos twice. So once with our headphone, the 8550, and then with third-party headphones, because we already knew that the headphone would be released a little later. But now also these images of Patrick can be revealed to the public. How does loudspeaker-based monitoring work? In general, it's already some magic going on. This magic is once again, of course, called our brain. Because we hear things and sound sources at places where we have no speakers. So if you just look at this nice image of two speakers are playing, and we hear stuff in between and also a little in front or a little behind. So we have a panorama from left to right, and we also have a field of depth that we can just hear, although it's just two speakers playing. It's, by the way, a very interesting band. I will have to ask Aki if this is, one of his favorite ensembles you want to set up, because it consists of 5 drummers, 3 grand pianos, 3 saxophones, and 2 singers. So let's see what will be the future of this band. So although we have 2 ears and we have 2 speakers playing stuff, our brain is somehow rendering this for us, because our brain is capable of realizing, hey, for example, if we get the same information from left and right, there must be something in the middle. This is called phantom center. And the phantom center is only very precise, for example, if you really have the same information, so frequency-wise, and also if it comes to, for example, early reflection patterns. So if you're sitting in a room and you have a glass wall or a window on one side, and on the other side you have, for example, just a bookshelf, then this phantom center might be a little blurred, as we call it, because you get different early reflection patterns from both sides. And information about, for example, reverb and rooms are also processed by the brain to give us some information. For example, this is really close to me. For example, it's dry. And another instrument, in this case, the saxophones, have a little more reverb. And then our brain tells us, okay, if there is more reverb, it has to be further away, because we learned that. So we realized when we walked around like a small daughter and just, for example, screaming around, that if mama is, really far away, then her voice sounds a little different compared to if she just, is directly in front of her. So first lesson, brain is really powerful, and brain is really capable of processing stuff. Our ears are good tools, but we need our brain to somehow create a world of sound that we want to reproduce. And for us as designers or acoustical designers, it can be the challenge that we have to fool the brain. So we have to be really clever to understand what's happening, and then we have to make sure that the brain somehow believes us, although we are not giving or not presenting the truth. So if you listen with headphones, it's of course just the same as having 2 speakers directly on your ears or in your ears. So this is a very, very ultra near field monitoring approach. And this somehow makes it harder to externalize things. So most of the stuff we are listening to will just appear in between our ears, so in our head. This is the in-head localization, which is typical for most headphones if you don't do binauralized processing. We'll talk about this later. And so the brain, of course, still gets information. We will still be able, of course, to clearly hear what's left and what's right and what's in the middle. But if you have done mixes yourself, you can easily tell that, for example, the panorama feels different. So you can create, for example, pretty heavy panorama settings, like really going I don't know, 90% or even 100% to one side, and this works fine on speakers because usually you have this 60 degrees angle. If you do this on headphones, it's really sticking out on one side. So a mix that works with this really hard panoramas can easily fall apart, for example, which already tells you something, so that it's not easy to mix on headphones the way you mix on speakers and vice versa. And usually the mixing between headphones and loudspeakers does not translate that well. Therefore, we thought about this nice personal reference monitoring solution. Once again, a typical Genelec 3-letter abbreviation, PRM, which sums up this complete solution. And speaking of a solution, hopefully it becomes clear, and hopefully also later on when I explain it in detail, that somehow these are not separate devices. They just work as one system. For example, the headphones need the 9320. The headphones need the intelligence of the 9320 to work in an accurate way, at least that we want to reach. So we aim for highest accuracy. And for example, this is only possible if the headphone is coupled, is somehow combined with the 9320. The main user benefits of the PRM are that you get versatile access to monitoring without compromising accuracy. So versatile access means that you don't have to sit in a studio. You can also sit in your kitchen, or you can sit in a hotel room, or you can just be on a train and things like that. So you just can use this setup in all mobile applications. And the next sentence you already know. This is the famous bridging the gap between calibrated in-room loudspeaker monitoring and personal headphone monitoring. This is something only native speakers can do. This was done by Andy Bensley, and it really sums it up perfectly fine. And it also makes sure that we talk about personal headphone monitoring, so that we have to do a few things, that it's really just somehow tailor-made for you and not just a basic headphone. The solution also offers user-adjustable equalization on many layers, but we will focus on the 9320 and on the Aural ID app first, just to make it possible that you can change the tonality of the system, which of course is important. And as I said, it offers excellent acoustic precision with a really neutral sound character and high resolution. And this is only possible because we calibrate each 8550 in eSalmi. And so we find out exactly if there are smaller differences between components, for example, between drivers, if the frequency response is slightly different between left and right, if the level is slightly different. This will be found out during our calibration process. And then we store this file to the cloud. So this is similar to, for example, to our measurement microphones. As you know, we always ask you to enter the serial of each measurement microphone. Of course, usually it's bundled with a network adapter, so the correct serial is already loaded. But these microphones already get better because we load the calibration data. And this is happening here as well. So we know headphone number 29, for example, has these small issues. And these issues are compensated by just loading the calibration data into the 9320. The PRM is completely also integrated in the GLM software. You already know this if you have seen part 1, that of course the 9320 is detected by GLM and is a really central device there, and you can access all settings of the 9320 using GLM. And the 9320 also makes it possible that you can just align levels. It's also something I spoke about last time already, but I think it's worth mentioning it again, that ideally you can switch between headphones and your speaker system and there is no level difference. Just if you take some time to adjust this exactly to your needs. What is the challenge with somehow creating a pair of headphones like this? On the right side, you see speakers, and I think this is something I think I can say that we are really good at, and we do this for a lot of years. And a speaker somehow is a little easier to design if you look at frequency responses and things like that, because it's easier to measure, because, to be honest, it's not that close to our ears. So if we want to, for example, check the design of one of our speakers, we bring it to an anechoic chamber, and we have, of course, a very high-end measuring microphone. And then we apply measurements using sweeps, for example. And then after some years of development, for example, an 8341 might look like what you see here at the top line. So just ignore the desktop. This is just the dip switch option. So this speaker is really, really flat and neutral within 1 to 1.5 dBs corridor, which is excellent. You know that, unfortunately, we are not working in anechoic chambers. So we bring the speakers into real rooms, and then this is happening. So now we no longer have the nice line from the slide before. Now it's the red one, if we would not be able to do something. So this is from my room, the same speaker, also a 41. Yeah, and then we have 13 dBs too much at, I think, 60, and then almost 12 dBs too much at 120. So it would be impossible to mix on that. And then, of course, we have AutoCal that calculates filters in a very intelligent way. I'm happy here to have no dips in the bass range, so I can compensate for the boosts pretty well using the filters. So it's somehow doable that we know the speaker design works fine. This is well thought out, and it measures excellent in an anechoic chamber, which is the good basis. And then we can adapt it to the room just by measuring the influences of your room. Already, of course, there are things we can't do anything about. For example, time domain. If you have a really reverberant room, then you know what you will have to do. We will need passive treatment. And of course, you cannot do anything with EQ filters. If we now look at the measured curve frequency response of a headphone, of a pair of headphones, you will see there is a difference, and this is quite significant. So we can absolutely live with what's happening in the bass and in the lower mids, but starting at 1K and especially at 3, 4K, a lot of stuff is happening. And you see, it's also different, of course, the way you measure it. You will need a special device like this GRAS. I hope they pronounce it like that, or it's GRAS. This is a company from Gunnar Rasmussen from Denmark, already well established, and they build a lot of testing units, for example, for headphones, and also to just find out about HRTFs. And you see, you have some kind of a target. The target is where you should place the headphone. Then you have ears. So virtual ears that somehow simulate an average ear. And this is where everything starts. So because none of us is having an average ear, every ear canal is different, and every, the size is different. The angle our ears have are different. So the moment we are talking about headphones and we measure headphones, it's almost impossible to tell, for example, this measurement somehow represents the way you would listen to this headphone, because we don't know how your ears look like. And because the headphone is so close to your ears, you will get these influences. And I think it's clear why these are happening in the high frequencies, because high frequencies have short wavelengths. And then, of course, the size of the ear starts to matter, and the way it is shaped. This all starts to matter. In the lower mids, and especially in the bass, where we have longer wavelengths, you can clearly see, there is no influence. So this is not the issue. But everyone who's doing mixes knows that, for example, especially this range between 4, 5, 6, 7K, of course, this is a critical one. So it's really easy to color sound and to get a wrong impression of sound if something is not correct there. So just keep this in mind. If you look at this, really strange lines, actually this headphone will sound okay for you. So this is not, I will not tell you which one it is, but this will sound perfectly okay, although it looks like this. This is also something to keep in mind if you're using tools. There are tools out there where you can just enter the model of your headphone, and then you get a calibration curve for that one. So they try to get it more linear. And then the first question, of course, should be, but for what ear? For what listener? So this is once again just an average thing you could try out, but usually a good headphones manufacturer also takes care that this average level is of course reached and that it works fine for most people. And this is of course also what we did with the 8550. Once again, this is just another measurement to show you this is the same headphone measured on different test stands. So a test stand is what you have seen before, where you can put the headphones on and with different ear simulators. And you see all similar, but in the upper mids and especially high frequencies, it's a complete, a huge difference. So as you can see, it's a chaos of colors here. And just keep this in mind. So this is pretty tricky. A few facts about our 8550. It's a closed one, so with so-called circumaural. Never heard this word before until this evening. Until this afternoon. Over the year, it's more common for me, but of course, I had my Latin lesson, so circumaural. You can think about what it is. This decision, of course, is a little special because you might know that a lot of high-res studio headphones use open designs for, of course, usually obvious reasons. There's one significant disadvantage with open designs, and this means that, of course, just noise coming from the outside is always reaching your ears, so there's absolutely no isolation to the outside. And if we think about, being able to, for example, doing some tweakings to a mix in an environment that is not perfectly silent, we thought it might be a better idea to have this isolation by using a closed design. I can already tell you, I think luckily it does not sound as a typical closed design, because a lot of closed headphones have the problem, or some manufacturers would say have the advantage of giving you a lot of bass. So they can be a little too bass heavy. And with our calibration and also the general design of the headphone, we prevented this. So the bass is absolutely on a really neutral level. We are using drivers or transducers with a 40 millimeter diameter, so already pretty large drivers, which usually means that you can get a lot of SPL and of course a good resolution. The weight is around 340 gram without the cable, which is not too heavy, but of course already feels like a proper headphone. Frequency response is just covering, of course, what human beings usually can hear, between 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, with the -3 dB point at both corners. And sensitivity is 103.5 dB SPL for 1 volt. We will just talk about this value a little later, because we can make use of this in the 9320. It offers, already mentioned, the user adjustable equalization, also using 9320. And in general, you will get a really excellent acoustic precision with a neutral sound character and high resolution, just of course, because the calibration in the factory. So this is something I tried out myself, right? The moment I got the pair of headphones. And for me, it really made a significant difference the moment I loaded the calibration file to the 9320. So everything was just really a little more cleaned up. So it was comparable, to be honest, to some GLM calibration. So especially the lower mids became more transparent. But of course, this, once again, this is how I received it. And you might have different ears, and you might say, hey, it's pretty similar, or it's even better in a different range of frequencies. So this is something you will then be able to check out. Why do we calibrate? I already mentioned most reasons. We define a target curve that matches the design of our headphones. So this is, for example, the line you have seen before, and then the measurement results had been just somehow circling around it. So if you would choose another smoothness level, for example, you can smooth with 1/3 of an octave, 1/6 of an octave, 1/12 of an octave. This is also something you should always pay attention to if you look to measurement results. What is the smoothing? Because it can, of course, if I smooth to 1 octave, everything looks really cool. This is not a problem. The curve we define, once again, cannot be an absolute curve. So it might be perfect for some people, and it might be close to perfect, hopefully, for others. But once again, it's you and your individual hearing system that will change the results. We make sure that these small differences of components are compensated for. This, of course, includes the left and right differences. And of course, this is something we are used to. For example, we make sure that if you buy an 8020 and you buy another one 2, 3, 4 years later, you can still have a stereo pair out of these two speakers, because the newer 8020 just absolutely fulfills the specs. So it's a really, really, narrow corridor of tolerance. And this is exactly what we are aiming for here as well for all of our headphones. So if you switch to another headphone, you enter the serial, and the results should be very, very similar compared to your original one. Where do you load these calibration data? This is possible with the new version of GLM, which hopefully will be released soon. This will be 5.12, I guess, or 5.2. Sorry, I think it will be 5.2. And this will just have another section under the 9320 section. So if you click on the icon of the 9320, you see the settings options. You click on settings, and then you have the common tab. And now you can see in the lower part, we have 4 basic settings, which somehow take into account how the headphone actually looks like, because we deliver it with leather ear cups, and you can, if you like to, just change them to velvet ear cups. So they are also part of the package. And both materials really also have an influence and might change the sound slightly. So we offer this as presets. And then you also see we have cable on the left, cable on the right. And yeah, it's a small thing, but it's a small hole where the cable is attached to. And indeed, it can make a small difference between left and right where you put the cable. So this is also selectable. And then the most important thing is that you enter the serial, and then you would just click on load to 9320. And then the cloud is doing the magic once more. So the file is just transferred to you and loaded into the 9320. And of course, it will stay there. So there's no need for an internet connection then if you want to use your headphones. It's just then stored in the 9320. This is how the complete package looks like. So if you want to get one, and hopefully you do, you will receive a lot of stuff. So you will get the 9320 with a transport case. You will get the 8550 with a transport case, measurement microphone. So you don't need a GLM kit, for example, because you can, of course, calibrate everything just with 9320 and the measurement microphone. A USB-C cable with an adapter to USB-A. And then we have 2 cables for the headphones. One is a spiral cable and one is a traditional one. And as already said, 2 additional ear cups and also 1 headband that can be replaced. So, and hopefully now this question is already, answered. This is a system solution because we need all components. So from the 9320 and its intelligence to load a calibration file, to the very neutral 8550 to give you a good representation of your audio. And the microphone is also important if you just want to calibrate your speakers. If you want to personalize your listening experience, and as said, please do so, because we talked about it. I cannot tell you, if, for example, you would need 2 dBs less at 3K. Aki also cannot do that. This is just up to you that you listen to speakers, for example, and then listen to your headphones and make adjustments, or just listen to reference material. This is also one absolutely fine that I know exactly, for example, how the cymbals or how the hi-hat or how the snare on this song should sound like, and then just use these filters. And yes, it's a small set, but as said, you already getting a more detailed calibration set, and then it's really about the tonality. If you want to dig deeper into it, then just wait for Aural ID. So this is the section of the headphones EQ. The famous 103.5 dB SPL for 1 volt can be entered here under headphone sensitivity. And this makes it possible now that you can just measure your noise dose, which means, how loud am I listening for what amount of time. And for speakers, we use a microphone, the regular measurement microphone that should be, of course, placed close to you, so where you are sitting. And with headphones, this is usually not possible. And the 9320 can give you this option. So enter this value, and then you will get an information how loud am I listening with headphones, which can be really interesting because sometimes it feels different on headphones. And as we all know, if you work for hours, it really makes sense to pay attention to this. Just don't mix too loud. Usually we have the best feeling, of balance between bass, mids, and high frequencies at around 70 to 74, 75 dBs. Of course, you can have fun from time to time and just crank it up, but I would always just do this for a short amount of time and then return to my regular mixing level. And it's also really useful to keep the same level. If you just found out, let's say you are working perfectly fine with the 72, 73, just do it all day and every day. And then you will be even faster because your brain does not have to adapt to a different listening level. Especially mastering engineers usually are absolutely, into this. And if you just, change something by half of a dB, you will just be out of the room because for them it's essential. Luckily, they can recall it usually. It's not a problem. But just be aware of that you can just do yourself a favor if you work at relatively low listening levels. I would say that 75 is not low, but I know that some people think about this differently. The next step then, if you would really go even further, so to infinity and beyond with using externalization and also especially, I think, make use of immersive workflows, so with setups that also can have surround speakers and have seating speakers, we have the Aural ID software. And some of you might have heard about this, and I'll keep this short, but I will just give you a basic explanation why we have this software and why it can make perfect sense to get this software in addition. So it's important to mention it's not part of the original package, so you will have to buy the software separately. But the pricing, I know, looks fine. So hopefully we can just share this with you soon. So beginning of the year, I think is a realistic option that Aural ID version 2 will then be available. And for all of you who just want to get Aural ID now, I'm really sorry that you will have to wait because, of course, we had Aural ID 1, but this is no longer available at the moment because we just don't support it. And really sorry for that. But if you're already using it, of course, you can reach out to us. But if you just decide this evening, I'll just buy this one, and I go to the web shop or to the App Store, it's not available at the moment. It will be soon. So if we talk about a head-related transfer function, it somehow just describes how our head, upper torso, ears influence the sound coming from different directions. So this function just describes your head and your listening system to make use of this. And as you can see, these are so-called magnitude effects here. We would get the sound from, I'm now in the perspective of the guy, from the left side. And so, of course, direct sound reaches the left ear. And then we have, of course, parts of the sound that are diffracted. So they just are traveling around the head and just reach the other ear as well. And for example, the shoulder is also getting some sound and it's reflecting the sound, and this is then also diffracted and also reaching your ear. So a lot of things already happening just by one speaker playing. And then, of course, we have phase or time effects because the sound travels longer from the left ear to the right ear. And you also have then diffractions somehow happening between the two ears, so higher order diffractions, which is pretty complex. But this is exactly the reason why so many things are happening in the highest frequencies. So an HRTF, just for this case, the speaker playing from the left, for this guy, once again, would look like this. So you see this blue curve, which is the magnitude frequency response for the left ear, and the orange one is for the right ear. And you can see similarities, once again, around 100 and lower frequencies, and significant difference at higher frequencies. And on the right side, you see a diagram that shows just the group delay difference between left and right. As said, because the sound travels longer to the other ear. And unfortunately, this is different for every single position of something. So every sound source somewhere in the room will have a different frequency response and will have a different pattern of phase and time of flight. So just to pick a few ones, for example, this is from just in front of you. So you see left, right are pretty similar. This is 45 degrees to the left and to the right, and you see already the level is, of course, lower on the opposite ear. And really heavy things happening, for example, at 270 degrees, where one ear has the regular, almost the regular response, and the other ears, there's nothing happening in the higher frequencies at all. So we realize, to be really precise, you will have to know a lot of graphs and a lot of phase things. Actually, it's just happening all around you. So it's just like a globe around you. You can use something like this, which is called a so-called common factor. So sometimes you can see HRTFs with this common factor or without, which just means this is an average magnitude across all directions of arrival. So a general profile. And if you look at this, this has similarity, for example, to the headphones measurement I have shown you in the beginning. So this is somehow, of course, also related to this common factor. But I said, for example, this would not tell us anything how it should look like that you just somehow externalize something from here. So behind you, or surround right, surround left. Doesn't tell us anything about this. It's just the common factor. So regular headphone cannot help us with that. This is not possible. So, sorry, a regular headphone playback. A regular headphone can, if you use the software, of course. Important. So, but a regular playback of a stereo file, of course, does not have this information. And even if you would play around with some stems from, surround stuff, unless we load an HRTF or binauralize, an engine that can binauralize stuff, it would not be possible that we get this impression that something is happening from behind, or exactly here, or in front of us. How do you, in general, generate an HRTF? In the past, the only way of doing this precisely was really to take some effort and go to a lab that has an anechoic chamber, and then they place microphones in your ears. And you will have to sit down, and then you have huge constructions like arcs that are just moving around you with, for example, a set of speakers that is just, at every position. Let's say, for example, every 10 degrees, there's one speaker. And then, you have the arc in one position, and then all of these speakers just sweep. So it's quick, 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 quick. Yeah, it's a pleasure to listen to this, because this is not only happening with one position of the arc, it's happening with a lot of positions. So you will just sit there, and after the procedure, I'm pretty sure that you will never, ever love to listen to sweeps again. But this is how it is done, because the sweeps are then recorded by the microphones in your ears. And of course, the same thing happens like in reality. If the speaker on the right side plays, the microphone in your right ear will get a different information compared to the other side. But I think we agree this is not possible for everyone to just, spend this amount of time, and especially visit something that can, for example, a lab that can provide this service for you. Therefore, we thought it could be easier using a smartphone. Yeah, usually I'm really skeptical. Smartphones somehow are the devil. but of course they're really, really useful. Or as Marlene always says, my daughter, she's just, if she sees my smartphone, she already says, no, 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 because this is what she hears all the time. So we just want to keep her away from it. But of course, she realizes that this is part of almost everything we do. Yeah. So now it's also part of doing an HRTF. Because with our Aural ID app, you can shoot a video and 2 photos with additional rulers just placed close to your ears for the scaling. And then we use a so-called photogrammetry extraction. It sounds very complicated, but of course the video contains a lot of, single frames, and you can use this to render a 3D model. And in the end, we can then simulate around 800 directions, which is pretty okay. So this is how you can, describe it if a visual designer is part of the team. So we have the 2 photos of the ears. So this is something, of course, others do as well, that you can just shoot a photo of your ear. But the main difference is usually they then just do a best choice, of course. They just see the shape of the ear, and then they have, let's say, 5 models, and they just apply the one that it's just the best match. Of course, still better than doing nothing, but this, of course, has nothing to do with the high precision HRTF. And we really only need this, that we have the scaling, so that we know your ears, for example, have a size of, 3.4 centimeters. And the most essential part is the video, and you will need a second person, because it's also not possible to do it like this, that you can just place the microphone on a stand and you turn yourself, because we need more data. So the short tutorial video explains it. The person will have to walk around you at a certain distance, and then he or she will have to just get closer to you. So just approach you and then film your ears really from a short distance, and changing the angles all the time, so that we can see the complete structure of the inner ear as well. This is why the second person is needed. And then you can get something like this. So you don't get this, but this is how it looks like in our system then. This is one of my colleagues, rendered perfectly fine. And as mentioned, the ear has an even higher resolution. So every point you see there shows resolution. So the resolution gets a little lower, of course, if we go to the cheeks and things. But it's very, very high for the ear itself, because, as you know, this is the main influence, especially for high frequencies. And if you decide to test Aural ID version 2, because this will then be possible. With Aural ID 1, it was not. Now we will have a test period of, I think it will be 2 weeks. And then, of course, you don't get your HRTF right from the start, but you can meet Mr. Kima, which is just one of the standard HRTFs available. He was born in '72 and was the world's first head and torso simulator. Interestingly, this is also done by the guys who have done this, this station to measure headphones. So they really are deeply into that. And Mr. Kima is somehow the median of a median. So everything is just average. So it's an average head, which with an average torso and average ears and things like that. So, and yeah, this is how the average person looks like. And as always, average is average, but it's of course it's never you. But Mr. Kima will already help you, for example, that you can easily, I think, experience externalization. So if we do this on demos and we have some, for example, 714 setup, and I can just then solo a channel, for example, this around left channel, this around right channel, you will clearly hear how it's no longer in your head. And usually the positioning is pretty okay. So already the Kima head can give you great results. And I said a lot of binauralized rendering softwares are just using these standard models, for example, Kima. What's new with Aural ID 2? First of all, it's now a standalone application. And this has one significant advantage, that you can now just place it into your signal flow where it belongs to. For example, with Aural ID 1, this was a plugin that was placed in your DAW. But let's say you had been using the Dolby renderer, which is outside the DAW, you could not make use of it. And now we just also deliver a virtual sound card, which is just called Aural ID Bridge. And you can then flexibly just route audio from your DAW or also from Apple Music or whatever you are using to the Aural ID bridge. And all of these channels will then be processed, and the output will be a binauralized stereo version. Because of this audio routing flexibility, I have to say it like this, Mac is way more flexible with a core audio, but I read about that Microsoft now also thinks about adding something very similar to, I think, Windows 11 with one of the next updates. And then hopefully it will also be possible for us to implement this. At the moment, when we launch it, it will be Mac only. Once again, sorry for that. For me, at least, it has an improved tonality. Because we had some discussions, the problem is always, the better the localization is and the better the externalization is, sometimes you get a little more coloration. And this is, not desirable, because most people, at least as how I see it, prefer that the sound is not that colored. And I can live with, if it's just localized 10 degrees off. This is something I can easily handle. So we, for example, also have now the profile immersive HRTF, which I think works really, really well for all of these immersive applications. But of course, you can also switch to the raw HRTF. This is no problem at all. Yeah, and of course, now, finally, we also have head tracking, which is useful because in reality, we use small movements of our head to make sure where something is exactly. This is just how we do it. Because even our brain can somehow get a little confused, for example. If, for example, on the back side, we are just not capable of doing that in a precise way, and then we just do it like this or like this, and then we have a better impression of what's going on. And this is exactly possible with our head tracking as well. So this is not a head tracker that is supposed to do, the gaming stuff, so that you do 330-degree circles. This is just for general movements. And it actually can make use of your camera. So you just use the webcam or the built-in camera of your computer, and you will just see your face, and your face will just get, of course, it's just eye detection and, of course, the mouth. This is enough to already then have the angles that you need. If you have an external tracker, you can use these as well. It's just one of the standard protocols. So some of you might have something that you can put on your headphone, for example. This is also supported. This is how you can do the routing. So for example, as an input channel, I would use Aural ID bridge 16, which would just mean this is 16 channels, which is perfectly fine, for example, for 714. And then I could use as output, as you can see here, for example, 9320. I have to say that Aural ID is not, it's not mandatory to have a 9320, of course. You can use the software, and you can also use your standard interface, third-party stuff here. This is not a problem at all. And this is then how it looks like. So you will tell Aural ID, I want to have, let's say, a virtual setup of speakers, for example, 714. This is what I'm using in my studio. It can also be a 5.1, or you can also try out stereo. It's no issue at all. 9, yeah. And then you will just see all of these virtual speakers. And what's also cool, that you can click on these speakers and you can listen to them in solo. You can also just hold down Control and click on it. And this is usually something I really like to do, just to show people how good the HRTF is working. And you can clearly hear a difference between, for example, side surrounds and rear surrounds. Top layer is always challenging, but for some people, for example, also for me, with Kima Head, this top layer already works pretty well. So you can really get an impression that it's higher than the rest. And if you then realize, for example, surround left is still a little too close to the mids, for example, to the side, to the side surround, then you can just change the angles. So you can click on the speakers and you can change all of the angles. So on this axis and on the other axis as well. So you can completely move it in space. What's also possible is to adjust the gain. And then also mentioned before, we have another set of EQs, this time a little more. So we have 6 fully parametric, wonderful word for Germans. Vollparametrisch sounds better. Fully parametric filters where you can perfectly, just match everything exactly to your needs. And if you have, the fantastic situation that you have a real in-room immersive system, of course, take your time and just play around with it, that it sounds similar. If you don't have a 714 system at home, for example, I don't have a 714 system, although I work for Genelec, then it's just huge. It's really fun to work with this virtual 714s because you can already get an impression of the mix. I would say you can perfectly prepare mixes. You can also do basic adjustments, tweaks, everything is absolutely fine. And I'm not saying this because we manufacture loudspeakers, but all people I talk to agree on that. It's the easiest and still the best way of make precise adjustments and decisions on speakers. It's just a little different. But hopefully with this solution, we have given you tools that you can get pretty close. But doing a session setup, just playing around with it, perhaps you never have had the opportunity to work in immersive or in surround. You can just use your DAW, just create a 5.1 or 714 bus, route the outputs into the Aural ID bridge, and then monitor through Aural ID. So the guys who know the Dolby Atmos renderer, this also has a binaural headphone option so that you can listen to that. And this is just another opportunity that usually should be even more precise because you use your tailor-made personal HRTF. So this is the PRM. So hopefully you will find good applications for it, because in the end, sometimes it's really interesting to see then what people will actually do with it. Sometimes we don't know. And I had to add this because it already was in my nice template. Once again, thanks to our visual designers team. And of course, winter is coming was not standing there, but it was just yeah. But it's the truth. So winter is coming, and unfortunately, I think we will not get the headphones out before Christmas. So you will just have to wait until the darkness in Finland starts to disappear again. But hopefully, I think the last thing I heard was around January, February. So just be a little more patient. And from time to time we do some shows. You can of course already visit us and listen to it. This is no problem. So just as always, thank you for being with us. This is the email address that always works, with a nice team of people who are online almost all the time, just because we are in different time zones. This is the advantage. And otherwise, I would now say we will have a look at your questions. So I will now here we go. I just saw the option that Jaco asked me if I can unmute myself. Hopefully he did this. Otherwise, this session would have been a little, silent. But I see that I'm unmuted, so everything's fine. So do we have questions? Let's just have a look. We have questions. Perfect. Really sorry. Now I'm bringing this up. So let me just have a look here. So I think this should work now. Let's see. I'm just trying, to bring the question up to the screen, and for some reason I cannot do that. Why is that so? Jaco, could you help me with that? We thought that I could also select the comments to bring them up. Otherwise, I would just read it for you. So first of all, we had exactly turning circles. I think this was sorted out. And So I have a question. I've been using the initial version of your Aural ID for about 2 years, but I had to stop using it. Thanks, Jakob. Perfect. Due to compatibility issues between the plugin and my DAW. Exactly. And this is exactly what we found out, why we decided to have the standalone application. I think every software and every software manufacturer can tell you that it's a huge challenge to somehow support all the AWs and all operating systems. And operating systems alone is wonderful. If just Apple tells you, hey, we've got something new, and we just for example removed a few libraries. So if your software was based on these libraries, just it's your problem. So this is the reason why we have the standalone app, and this hopefully makes it easier. So next question, please. Or was it now me? Okay, there's one. Yeah, this was just another question. Okay, there was a question which DAW we are using. We did not use any DAW here. So you can use all DAWs. This is also now possible because of the standalone application. And I think, yeah, this question is related to multi-channel monitoring. So last, yeah, does the 8550A offer any differences in multi-channel monitoring compared to traditional stereo headphones with binaural processing? Yes and yes. First of all, the 8550 offers you a higher neutrality because of the calibration we do with the 9320. And then I would say if you have the HRTF of Aural ID, this is I think, one of the most precise HRTFs you can get. And of course, this will give you a better representation and especially a better externalization of everything compared to a standard binaural processing. Because as said, usually these binaural processors work with standard HRTFs like KEMA. Does it come with a single stereo cable or dual left and right connection? It's indeed just one cable that is attached on one side. So you can choose on your own if you would like to have it on the left side or on the right side. So both of these cables. I think this was confusing because I was talking about two cables, but one is actually just an option that is a spiral, and the other one is a straight cable. And you can just decide on which side you would like to have it. Does the 8550 headphones need actual loudspeakers on the network to reference in order to work, or the headphones can work on their own together with 9320? Yes, very good question. I could add this to the presentation. You can use it standalone. There's no need for speakers. Of course, a reference with speakers could be helpful for you because then you can just make your adjustments, for example, for EQ tweaking. But GLM itself, for example, does not have this reference. You can load somehow settings from GLM into Aural ID just to get an impression, how you tuned your system. But usually, it's just one look on the sound character profile, and then you know what's happening here. So indeed, you could use just the 9320 and 8550. You install GLM, and then you have access to everything that you need. Also, if you would like to use Aural ID then. So, yeah, exactly. Then someone was talking about the incompatibilities between, the different plugins. And indeed, this is a challenge. You can easily find this out, even if it's Waves or someone like them, and they are huge. And if there is an update, sometimes, you'll just have to wait until Wave is updating all of their plugins to make it work again. Yeah. And then there's one question about the routing, exactly from Nuendo or Studio One, and it did not function properly on the headphones. This is now also possible. For example, especially with Studio One, we just did it on the last show in Hamburg. So you have the 714 bus, you route it to the Aural ID bridge, you open Aural ID, input is Aural ID bridge, output is, for example, 9320, and then it works fine. And of course, you can always check the channels, so you can change the routing. So you get somehow a matrix of everything, and then you can also fine tune it. Because indeed, sometimes, for example, Logic 714 just has, I think it's a different, they just have the channels in a different order. And then, of course, you can optimize that. I would always do this by, soloing the channel in the DAW, for example, listening to the center now, and then make sure that it's also on the center channel then in Aural ID. So, very good question by Andrew. This was originally part, and then I forgot to tell you. You can not purchase the headphones alone, but as said, you can purchase them if you have a 9320. This is possible. And then just, the moment we start shipping, you will have the option in your My Genelec account. So where you now already can see your grade reports, for example, and of course your registrations and things like that. Then everyone who has a 9320 gets the option to order this headphone. And then they will be shipped, of course, separately to you. Yeah, exactly. And then someone was talking about Apple's AirPods or these Mobius headphones can now provide a fairly realistic directional monitor. True. Also if you are doing a lot of mixes, for example, I know of Eric, my colleague from Germany, who's now done, I think, around 1,000 Dolby Atmos mixes in his studio. And of course, he also then just checks the stuff on regular customer headphones. This is something you, of course, should do in the end, just to get an impression, because this is how people will listen to it and how it will be rendered. So this makes perfect sense. But as always, this is, if you work on a calibrated monitor, like our loudspeakers, the transition and the translation to other rooms and other systems will be way easier. Of course, it will sound different in the car, and of course, it will sound different, if it's just a Bluetooth loudspeaker that is mono. But the general decisions you can always make with confidence, and this is what we would like to achieve with the 8550 as well. But please, of course, always check the AirPods in the end as well. By the way, Apple is good to mention because they just working on making AirPods capable of being a hearing aid system, which of course is a pretty cool idea. So people just can have them in their ears. It looks like I'm just cool. I'm wearing AirPods, but actually it's doing some hearing aid stuff for them. And we had been really happy to see, they of course have labs at Apple to also, do all of their research. And this lab is completely equipped with Genelec loudspeakers. It's a huge somehow globe setup with Genelec 2-way and 3-way SAM speakers. So perfect. Do you honestly think any of us will buy this and they don't have GLM and mic already? This is the thing. But, how should we do it? Should we leave the microphone out of the package? Then it's not interesting for people, who just get this as a new device. And but of course, this is a question that can be asked. You could give it to someone who has no GLM kit, for example. This would be my approach. Or you can keep it as a spare thing. There will be offline video afterwards, yes. Already sorry that the audio quality is not perfect, but this is still a streaming tool. So please don't blame us. We just tried a lot of stuff, but in general, they just make sure that it goes through. And of course, this is the most important thing. And they don't care about audio quality that much as we do, especially the codec. So perfect. I'm just scrolling through it. As said, if I miss something now, you will get your reply for sure. The 8550 headphones don't have a head tracking feature. That's a bit disappointing. Yes and no, because Aural ID has a head tracking feature. And of course, you can add an additional tracker there. And to be honest, I don't know so many about a lot of headphones already offering this out of the box, because usually this is something really special. So, for example, if you just have it built in, then the weight will get higher, and people who don't need head tracking, they will just complain about that it's too heavy. So you can make use of your camera, of course, and of course any standard tracker can be attached. And once more, no built-in head tracker is disappointing. Asset. You could also tell me now, hey, if I'm just into that, I already have a head tracker. Why can't I use it? Why has it an additional one? So just turning it now. So no, we have no additional head tracker here, but we have the camera and we have the option that it supports the standard protocol. And then there was a question, how closely, if at all, does Genelec work with other spatial audio software providers like Fiedler? Specifically, Fiedler, interesting. Fiedler just mentioned that you don't need speakers. That you don't need speakers for example, for immersive stuff. I disagree strongly. And I said not only because we are building speakers. No, joking aside, of course, we are always in contact with each other. This is a family somehow. You meet the same people at every show. Of course, I know Jungkook Lee, and we all are in contact with him, who is doing, the Virtuoso plugin, stuff like that. Jungkook Lee himself, for example, is using our HRTF from Aural ID as a SOFA file, if he's using and if he's checking out his stuff. So there is always, of course, an interaction there. And we already realized, and this is great for us, that there is an interest in the quality of our HRTF file. And as mentioned, if it will become available, you can also get the SOFA file. SOFA file is somehow an open file that can be used with third-party software. So then you are not forced, for example, to use Aural ID. We still recommend this because this makes really use of the details of our HRTF. But of course, it's then possible to get the SOFA file as well. So Wilfried joined the presentation. Thanks so much. Can the Aural ID be used for stereo format? Yes, you can. You can. Find it out yourself. To be honest, I don't. This is just my personal opinion now. Now I'm not speaking as as Genelec Marcel. I'm speaking as sound engineer Marcel. If it's about stereo, I still prefer the regular way of using headphones. Yeah. It can be convincing, but if I'm, for example, doing EQs and just the coloration thing, I don't feel that comfortable with it. But of course, you can check it out. You can just load the preset stereo, and then you will have a 60-degree triangle, so which just represents a regular stereo one. Yeah, and what I forgot to mention, because I think this will be part of the next webinar, which also has more about Aural ID. Then we do not simulate rooms or speaker systems or anything like that. So you cannot load, I don't know, control room A from Abbey Road or things like that. So we only have a small thing which works with early reflections that can be used. So last question by Nonus. I don't truly understand why Genelec keeps using the 8XXX model number for some of these latest products. 8550 would make much more sense as yeah. This is a really interesting discussion, and believe me, it gets more and more it's so complicated. If you have, if you just want to have a look at it in detail, we have a PDF at our website explaining somehow the logic behind all of our numbers. And I think for most of the models, this is a logic, and it's just working perfectly fine. But we found out ourselves that we are running out of numbers. So we will have to use numbers that usually, of course, just are not really part of that family. Yeah? I agree with you, for example, that 9 would make sense, but 9 is already in use with, external interfaces like 9301, 9401, 9310. So this is somehow part of the complete SAM experience, and this is 8000. So we are really sorry for that. We have believe me, we sometimes have huge discussions about the naming, and there's always someone who has a good explanation why it might work. For example, usually, as you know, the last 2 digits are usually about the size of the driver. But should it be here for the headphones? Should we use then 40 because it's 40 millimeters? So this is probably we could ask you next time that we just make a nice thing. Just suggest your name options, and then we will choose the best one. Cool, perfect. So once again, thank you so much. As always, it was a little longer. I don't care. You stayed with me. That's great. And then have a nice evening, day, wherever you are, and stay tuned for the next webinar. And as said, if you have any more questions, please just use the comments or email us directly to support@genelec.com. And also, once again, thanks to the complete team, starting from visual designers, to marketing in general, to Jaakko, who's spending his dark night in Finland with us, and of course, to our fantastic R&D team. So thanks a lot. See you soon.